Hey, what's up, folks? It's Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. About to watch a replay of our Wednesday night Twitch stream, the Million Dollar Mission Week 13 edition, where I review my previous week's 150 NFL DFS lineups on FanDuel and DraftKings in a quest to win the $1 million top prize once again. This past week, almost took down a huge prize. Had a big sweat in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, but did take home some pretty nice large tickets. And we talked about my ROI in this particular episode. Again, talked about the games I chose to stack, why I was so heavy on Baker Mayfield and the Browns, why I was so heavy on Rashard Higgins in particular. So a lot of player pool selection discussion in this episode, of course, stacking, and then of course contest selection and why I chose the contest that I did. We do these streams every Tuesday or Wednesday night to review my lineups, and it's a 30-minute session where we also take your questions live to discuss high-level NFL DFS tournament strategy. So encourage you to go check us out live on these Tuesday and Wednesday nights for the Million Dollar Mission, twitch.tv/Occupy Fantasy. It's a really good chance to pick our brains about how we approach NFL DFS tournament slates. But if you can't make them live, we understand. That's why we put these replays here on YouTube. So you can always just comment below with your questions, and we'll take the time to answer them and get back to you. So sit back, enjoy, take some notes.
What's going on, everybody? It is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Back again for a back-to-back stream. I'm here with Brian at Brian Jester FF on Twitter. Here to break down his lineups from last week. What's up, man? How's it going?
What's up, Moose? Man, so close to a big week in week 13.
Yeah.
Kind of disappointing. Got some big tickets out of it. The process stays on the straight and narrow, so I'm still feeling pretty good. How you doing today?
Good. I working on the NBA model some, getting that optimized for this season. Working on some NHL stuff, working on NBA preseason. A lot of behind the scenes stuff going on which gets my fingers tingling.
And again, I'm dropping a little teaser here. We got some even bigger news coming down the pipe for people. But we still got a couple more weeks before that announcement drops. So lots of things we're working on at Occupy.
Yeah, that super big announcement. Yeah.
Yes, that one.
Definitely. So so what's up, Jayhawk? Glad you're in the chat here. For everyone that's watching here, or if you're watching this replay, this is the Million Dollar Mission Week 13 edition, where we take Brian's 150 max lineups that he did last week on DraftKings and FanDuel, and we review what he did, why he did it, was it the right move in 2020 hindsight, and then we also see what other pros do. We answer your questions on how to help build lineups, whether that's single entry, 20 max, the rare, like when you get a ticket, you have like 17 entries. You're like, how the fuck do I do this? Or if you're a big baller and you do 150. So Brian, I know you talked about this was the spike week. I guess we can just jump right into it. What you see on screen here, if I can get it to change, is how Brian did on DraftKings last week. 1570 entries for 2272 in winnings for a 45% ROI.
Yeah, maybe not a spike, maybe like a minor bump, but certainly better than what we normally see. And honestly, 45% is pretty sick. All things considered, it's not 60K or whatever, but if I won 45% every week, I'd be thrilled.
Hell yeah, you would. Nitro hashtag OF Moose Brian hashtag Chris. Nitro is hashtag Bismo. Yeah, he's crushing it.
What's up, y'all?
What's up, Q? We hop over to FanDuel. 2466 in entries, 2429 in winnings for a -2% ROI, which is like when I first saw this, I was like, "Are you sure you didn't miss something?" Like, because
no,
you either spike week or reverse spike. I guess implode. I guess it would be. It's like either -60 or 300%.
This goes to show how close it was this week.
Yeah.
Like a profitable week on DraftKings, breaking even in top heavy payouts in tournaments on FanDuel. Goes to show how really, really close it was this week, and almost broke through. Almost broke through, and I had some sweats, and we'll talk about those here in a second.
Yeah, Q is trying to do the exclamation point Bismo. Nightbot. We didn't configure it. It's supposed to be some of the CS:GO lines. We're just gonna have to create a bot of Nightbot. Then we do exclamation point Bismo. It just generates a random CS:GO lineup.
It just does a random biz chart link.
Oh yes. Yeah, absolutely. Bismo says that's the least Court Jester's ROI I've ever seen.
Dude, it was crazy. It was a crazy week. So, just so everyone knows, so generally on FanDuel, I'm playing the Millie, which is $4 and like 500,000 people. the $9 rush, which is like 30,000 people, and then the snap, which is I think like 60,000 people, and that's a $3 tournament. And that's what you see in these entries here. They're all pretty top heavy payouts. The millie's like 500K to first. The rush is 40 or 50K depending on the week, and then the snap is 20K. So different levels there. And then on DraftKings, I'm mostly playing the slant. This week I did have some millie tickets, and I put the satellite cost in there as well.
Nice.
And that's where I had the big sweat.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really quick, I do just want to go through. Thank you, Nitro, for the 1,000-bit cheer. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it, Nitro. Thank you, sir.
And if we take a look at how you've done year to date, 44.3K in entries, past that six-figure mark in winnings for a 127% ROI.
Look at that. Exactly 100K, at least rounded up.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sick. That's
Well,
pretty
actually,
good. That's a good number to see.
If you round like mathematics, it should be 101K, but I'm giving you the BOTD. I'm rounding down on everything.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. That's ultimate transparency. Not inflating any numbers whatsoever for me, most, even if it's put to the single digit. So 127% ROI. If you look at the week, literally only one super big week for me.
Yeah.
When I won the $9 rush on FanDuel, and these entry fees are only including direct buy-ins for the most part. I'll have a bunch of tickets to WFC Fan Championship. Fingers crossed, maybe live or I guess online finals here in the next week or so. And when those come about, we'll include my satellite costs in the ROI just for pure transparency here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. So you had 45% ROI on DraftKings, breaking even on FanDuel. So overall, you had a winning week. However, because your ROI was so high from the week before, if we look at the chart from #BizChart, you'll see that your ROI actually went down from last week, even though you had a winning week.
That's super fun. Look at that. So, yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about. Yeah, I think I'm saving my next spike for next week, not this upcoming weekend, next weekend, hopefully.
Yeah, you gotta save it for WFFC week.
Gotta save it for that. Million up top.
I see a bunch of people putting in some chats in there, some hype emotes. Let's get some emotes rolling for Brian's #Spike Week. So I'm gonna throw some stuff in here, and
almost #Spike Week. I just noticed that in the chart. That's hilarious.
Yeah, thank you, Bismo, for that. That's awesome. Dude's a piece of charting. So, so how do you want to take this, Brian? You want to take a look at? I have your top winning DraftKings lineup. Do you want to take a look at that?
Yeah, I think let's talk about this. So this lineup in particular was one of my, I think, 11 or 12 millie lineups I had on DraftKings. I just had tickets, so I threw those in. I'll play those pretty much whenever I get them. And this particular lineup was in 30th place. It was actually hovering in the top 10 most of the 1 o'clock game.
Yeah.
Some bullshit happened late 1 o'clock. I was in 30th place after the 1 o'clock games out of 200,000 entries. No one above me had Austin Eckler, so I didn't late swap. I held Austin Eckler strong. They proceeded to get blown out 45-0, and then I dropped to 144th place. All in all, a top 0.1% finish, but pretty disappointing when as I was following along throughout the day.
Yeah, you can tell Eckler is not streaming, or else we'd rate him and be like, dude, why'd you get us 10 DraftKings points?
He tried, man. He tried. He got 10 DraftKings points, and his team they lost by 8 touchdowns. So I really can't blame him.
No.
Blame the rest of the Chargers. He tried his hardest. Still scored 10 points. So
Yeah.
But I'm pretty happy about this lineup. And if anyone has questions about this particular lineup, let's get them in now. We can discuss. But Moose, I thought this was, just an incredible lineup. Not to be biased, but the 3x1 game stack in a game that no one really stacked was great.
Yeah, I mean, look, 2%, 7%, 9%, 1%, 1.6%. Like, I'm curious what this is on the stack. You're probably one of the few people that actually had this on the Fantasy Labs dashboard.
I'm curious to check. We can check the millie and see who had a Mayfield, Landry, Higgy Bear, Corey Davis stack. It can't be that many people. Maybe we should just check that really quickly.
Yeah, that's actually what I want to check out. So the contest dashboard. Nope, that's not what I want. Nope. Is it contest dashboard?
Yeah, contest dashboard.
Oh, is it premium now?
Is it really?
RIP.
No, hold on. Let me see here. Let me check on my end.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, it is premium now. What a disaster.
Well, that sucks. Guess we're going to be building our own contest dashboard.
Yeah. Well, holy shit. All right, well, this is something we'll have to work on. Yeah, so now we have to pivot a little bit here live, so no big deal. But I will say about this, what's the one thing you notice about ownership in this? Where's the ownership concentrated in my lineup?
Running backs.
We talk about it all the time. I'm okay with playing chalky running backs. And honestly, this is a pretty rare lineup for me. Rarely am I playing this amount of sub 10% owned guys.
Yeah.
But that game stack, for whatever reason, despite us calling it out, was just not heavily utilized.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, very rarely do you see you, Brian, with everybody basically under 10% minus that. And Q points out, talking about that, shakes fist and boomer. Like, yeah. So, all right, yeah. So, this is, they updated, made it premium, rip. Yeah, so we talked about this before. Running backs, this should be your highest concentrated ownership of players. So, Eckler, Demont, both over 22%. Yeah, Demont was 28. Yeah, so, and I think, Brian, when that's one of the things you talk about and how I build 150, I think you build it to an extent like that as well, where you're first kind of starting out after stacks. You get your stacks. All right, Cleveland, Tennessee's going to be one of the games I stack. Now let me focus on what power horse running backs I need to jam in these lineups. Yeah,
exactly. And a couple questions here in the chat. Bismo says, was this hand built since it was tickets and just a few entries? No, so I maxed the slant on DraftKings to $9. That was 150 entries. So I made my 150 lineups, and then I went through and handpicked my favorite 11 of those groups. And that can be subjective, of course, but I wanted to get guys in there that I liked. And then Ken says, do I wish I had anyone else besides Ridley? Yeah, probably so, given the fact that he quote-unquote only scored 18. But that really wasn't the problem here. I didn't have the Pats defense.
Yeah.
Eckler busted, and that was really the key here. I think Ridley did enough for me to win a milli at his price point. 18 points is probably okay. But, is what it is.
Sounds like a plan, yeah. And let's see here. What's up, T Nasty? He says, what's good, fellas? And he says, sorry I'm late. Did I miss Brian's story?
What's up, T Nasty? Yeah, it was just a little bit of a mini sweat here. It actually didn't turn into, it was a sweat at 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And then it immediately became not a sweat as the Patriots were up just like by a billion scores. So I actually put this lineup in a bunch of other satellites as well. And so while I didn't win the milli, while I had a little bit of a nice ROI, I did win 3 different $3,000 tickets. I won a $1,500 ticket and then a variety of other tickets. So really good ticket week on my part. The one guy I do want to talk about in this lineup that I was kind of surprised, but I guess if you think about it, it's not that shocking that he was 1% owned. That's Rashard Higgins. And I think this is probably something people could add to their process. It's something that we incorporate, in the model and whatnot too. But like going through, maybe it's Friday night, Saturday, maybe it's even Sunday morning if you have the time, depending on what your schedule is for your NFL process. And just looking through the injury reports for each team. Just literally Google, Browns injury report, Titans injury report. And so we'd like this game to stack anyways. And we're always looking for cheap pieces to stack, in our big game stacks. And to me, what was important for this particular game was Kadero Hodge, the number 3 receiver, who's been playing a good amount. I guess you could probably even call him the number 2 receiver for Cleveland. He was going to be out this past week. Adoree Jackson, cornerback for Titans, one of the number 2 cornerbacks. He was out. So when you add those two pieces together, Rashard Higgins, who was 4K, 4,200, was going to see a massive boost in playing time against backup cornerbacks as a cheap piece of a game environment we thought was going to shoot out. So for me, he was one of my highest exposed guys. I loved Rashard Higgins this week, and he balled out, so it worked out pretty well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I do want to just point out, you talked about the cornerback being out, and normally we say cornerback, wide receiver matchups don't matter, but when there's an injury and that next level of tiers has to step up and try and guard someone, then there is a boost for that wide receiver.
Yeah, and honestly, this is why I played Ridley too, or at least why I picked a Ridley lineup for my hand-selected lineup, because Janoris Jenkins was out, and not that he's a fantastic cornerback by any means, but I figured Marshawn would be on Julio or at least vice versa, but at least Ridley would get some reps against a backup cornerback, and that's why I picked this lineup too.
Yeah. Bismo says, what were your thoughts on Kiki? When he plays, he is #good, and what was your exposure to him?
For sure. So I didn't stack that game, so I didn't have a ton of exposure. And to be honest, because he was so cheap and a lot of my game stacks were really cheap this week, I didn't have a need for really cheap receivers. I think I had 8 or 10% exposure on DraftKings, even less on FanDuel. So yeah, I think something to keep in mind is that Kiki maybe is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Star Wars Dad says New England's always throwing a wrench in things. You play them, they don't perform, and you do, and you don't. You do, and they don't perform. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Damn it, New England.
What can you do? Q's calling out Bismo for not being in the CS:GO chat. And when he says meet you at the statue, for some reason, I guess it's because I've been playing a lot of retro games lately. When he says statue, it reminds me of the statue level in GoldenEye 64. It's actually one of the games I played recently. It's like
GoldenEye.
Yeah, what a game. Cool. All right, so Brian, do you want to outside of this? I'm curious, what other games did you stack this week and on DraftKings?
Yeah, so it was the ones in the plug. I know Chris called out this Cleveland, Tennessee game stack, which, despite how much it blew up, wasn't really in winning GPP lineups. It was like a Derek Carr, Darren Waller 2x0 stack. When in reality, because really not a lot of people stacked at least this side of the game, I felt like this should have won GPPs, and it probably could have. But just I guess not a lot of people did it. So the Cleveland, Tennessee stacked both sides. Minnesota, Jacksonville stacked both sides. Okay. Hence my Mike Glennon ice cream cake tweet at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. And then I didn't really feel comfortable at a game after that. So I looked at 2 of at least what I thought were high favorite, high team total teams, and just ran those sides. So Green Bay against the Eagles, I ran purely Green Bay side of that stack. And then, 3x1s, but still only Green Bay. I didn't run any Carson Wentz. And then the same for the Raiders game. So I've run a bunch of Derek Carr, but no Sam Darnold. So those are my 6 quarterbacks I used.
Okay, cool. Let me see here. Yes, if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and ask. Let's see here. Nitro says perfect dart. Funny thing about that is I actually have, if you guys are any fans of like collecting games, I actually have a sealed copy, and it's professionally graded. That's one of my what's like the top tier, like your biggest thing in your collection? What's that called?
Like your Holy Grail?
Yeah. It's like not the Holy Grail that I want, but the Holy Grail that I have.
Gotcha. So that's perfect dark you have?
Yeah. So it's factory sealed, never opened, and professionally graded by, it's called WADA Games. They grade retro games. They give you like a number, and they put it in a case so you can't open it. So
that's pretty sick.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess it's just turned into a Nintendo 64 chat. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right, Brian. Should we hop over to, I guess, FanDuel? I have the spreadsheet with all your information on it.
Yeah, let's talk about that, since I guess Fantasy Labs is shut down forever. We'll have to pivot on these streams. But yeah, let's look at that.
Perfect. All right, so let me go ahead and pull that up here, and I think I want to zoom in a bunch on this.
Oh yeah, let's get some zoom going.
Let's see, that should be good right there, right?
Yeah, so these are my FanDuel exposures, and as you'll see, this is pretty in line. If you look on the right of the screen, the positional count, as always, 6 quarterbacks, 10 running backs, a little more than usual. 33 receivers, right in line. 8 tight ends, 7 defense, a little higher. Either way, 64 total players this week. Right in that sweet spot. Felt really good about my lineups and my process this week. And let's see. There's at least 1 or 2 questions in the chat, so let's get to those before I talk about Myles Gaskin, which I thought was a pretty interesting case this week.
Yeah, totally. Ed says, "What's up? I'm late. Who won what?"
Ed, I won some big tickets. That's about it. I didn't win any big cash. We're saving that for next week.
Yeah, and I actually just checked what Jayhawk's saying. On FanDuel, literally everybody's salary is $100.
Yeah, so they'll for preseason slates. I don't know about like specifically $100, but for preseason, because of the uncertainty in playing time, and because like a backup could play a lot more than say LeBron James, they're not gonna price LeBron at $10K and price I don't even know a backup NBA player at like $3K. They just price everyone the same price, and it's up to us to figure out who's going to play the most, and that's what Garrett and Tommy are going to do in our preseason daily plug. So a little bit of an edge there.
Yeah, the thing is though, DraftKings is actually doing regular pricing for NBA preseason.
Oh, so that makes it really interesting. It makes Tommy and Garrett's jobs pretty tough.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Starlord's dad says, is playing both running backs and a game stack negatively correlated, and do you play that in your stacks?
I will play it only if both guys are like, play really heavily in the passing game. If you look at just like correlations for games, running backs and opposing running backs have like a roughly 20% positive correlation, which is pretty good. So you can definitely do it. My only thing is I will only do it if they both catch passes. And like if they're in my player pool already. If I'm not going to, let's just say, I'm just trying to think of a random example here. Like, let me see. I'm just going to look on who's on the schedule this week, just really quickly to get a sense of something. Actually, just looking at last week, like Houston and Indy. If I was stacking that game, for instance, right?
Okay.
Let's say Jonathan Taylor, David Johnson. They weren't like great plays in my eyes. I didn't have them in my player pool. So if I was stacking the game, I probably wouldn't have lineups with both David Johnson and Jonathan Taylor. But, Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry, sure, maybe that's a game I'll stack both running backs together. But you got to figure, especially guys like Henry and Chubb who don't play a ton in the passing game, if a game stack's going off and you're including a quarterback, most of the scoring is probably passing. So if they're going to throw touchdowns, at least have the running back playing in the passing game. The only thing I will say here, if you're playing smaller contests, and we've talked about this a couple times before, 100-player leagues, smaller satellites, playing running backs with the quarterback to lock up all the scoring. If a game goes off and a team scores, 41 points like the Browns, and you get every single touchdown from the quarterback and the running back, then you're in really good shape to take down a 100-player league or a satellite. Whereas in GPPs, you need that scoring to be a little more concentrated.
Yep, absolutely. Good point there. And then last question that we have up here. Tina asks, do you always look for cheap stacks on DraftKings?
No, not necessarily. If choosing between FanDuel and DraftKings, you definitely need a little bit more salary advantage in using cheaper stacks. But we came to this conclusion and had this new theory as of just recently, a couple of weeks ago. T Nasty, at least have one cheap player in every stack you make. So, for instance, if you're stacking a Kansas City game, at least have Watkins or D-Rob or Mecole Hardman, or if there's a backup player playing or something, or a cheap player from the other side. That one cheap player allows you to fit all in a lot of other good players without sacrificing upside in that game stack.
Yep. And I'm just giving Bismo shit. He says, asked about your Marvin Jones exposure. It's like you have 15% on FanDuel. Do you know what your exposure was on DraftKings?
Yeah, roughly the same. I think because he was a UPWR, Christ. Yeah, minimum 15% for me. And I was shocked. He was only 2% owned on FanDuel, which was obviously pretty good leverage.
Yep, absolutely. So you said you want to talk about the gas can?
Yeah, so let's talk about gas can. I think on Saturday, even on Friday, we said if he's activated, he's a lock button on FanDuel. And I think if you're making just a couple of lineups, it made sense. And that was, he was 5,500, going to get almost every touch, most of the goal line work, most of the passing game work. And it played out that way. Obviously, got hit with some negative touchdown variance. So is what it is. But as I said let's lock button Gaskin. So I go to build my lineup Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and I lock him in, and my exposure acting funky. Like nothing's really working.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me take the lock button off for a second. And then everything worked perfectly. Come to find out, most of my stacks were really cheap. A lot of the plays we wanted to play were really cheap. So there was no need to lock button Gaskin, even though he's a really good play. It's not like he was opening up a lot like he would on a typical slate.
Yeah.
So we have these lock button running backs, and most of the time we do lock button them, but it's also in the context of the slate. If it doesn't help you get to higher dollar plays in your lineup, then you're not really benefiting from locking him into every single lineup. And this is a rarity. This is the first time I've ever seen this happen, but it's just something that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, again, if there's so many cheap plays, it doesn't make sense to drop down in salary just to fit in 10 value plays.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ken says, what do you guys think? I've been 150 max in these 100-player leagues for weeks now using 3x2, and I'm considering going back to 3x1 because the cash is all up top on first.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. 3x2s in games where there are a lot of options, I think you can still run those. Maybe games where it's a little more limited, you don't have to force 3x2s. But again, it's still a small sample. I know you've only been maxing the 100-player leagues as of the last few weeks, maybe. And I think we probably need a season, if not more, of data to even consider whether that's good or not. I still think both are plus EV, 3x2 or 3x1 in 100-player leagues. The safest thing to do is just the 3x1. You won't see any complaints from me 3x1, any high-risk lineup. So maybe that's a safer way to go until we get more data, or at least until you track it more, Ken.
Yeah. Spirals asked, were you guys fading Montgomery because I thought it was an easy fade?
No, Spiral, you should probably read our daily plug. We were pretty heavy on Montgomery. We talked about him on Saturday. Most of you go to my exposures, I think I had 30-ish% of Montgomery, or did I have less on FanDuel? I can't remember.
I don't see him up here.
If you just sort by exposure, let me see what I have.
10.7%.
I had more. Okay, I had 30-something% on DraftKings because of the Gaskin price on FanDuel is why.
Yeah.
But no, he's a guy getting a lot of touches, really good matchup, plays regardless of the game script, work in the passing game, work around the goal line, and his price was super static for some reason. So that was a big reason we're Montgomery this week.
Yeah. Starlet Dad asks, so this week, if Gibson running back is out, are we locking in McKissick at running back?
It's tempting to. I think he's. Let me see. I don't have his. I haven't looked at the prices yet. But here's the thing with McKissick. Unless he's like bare minimum price, which he might be. I haven't looked. We want to lock running backs who can play regardless of how the game turns out.
Yeah.
So running backs generally. I mean, this is a rare situation, and we said that a couple of times this stream. But generally, we're looking at guys who, if they get down, they can still play in the pass game, right? Or if they have a pass heavy game plan, then they still play. McKissick's the opposite. If somehow Washington's leading by a touchdown or two in that game, it's going to be all Peyton Barber mostly, which is not how we think about backup running backs. So McKissick, he could play if it's weird as a running back, might not play a ton if Washington's leading. So he's not lock button in the sense that he's not really safe from a couple game scripts that could happen. But I will say he's probably a really good play because of his target volume.
Yeah, I'm looking here. He's 5,300 on FanDuel and 4,900 on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I mean that's pretty good. But again, he doesn't get the goal line work necessarily either, so it's not a lot of touchdown upside. He's close. He's a really good play, and I imagine he'll be written up in the plug this week. But he's not lock button territory because there's a couple of warts.
Yep. Head says, don't 4-1, at least with Rudolph, or else you'll miss the pay line at 100-player leads by 1 point. Oof.
Well, if Rudolph caught one pass, dude, you'd have been straight. That sucks.
That definitely sucks. As Bismarck points out, play high, weighted opportunity running backs, underperforming wide receivers, rounded out with the stack always. Again, that's a great way to just stack and build a lineup.
Good summary, Biz. That's the way to do it. I've been doing it for 2 years now. Great success. We're going to keep doing it until something changes, but everything we looked at moves says nothing's changing yet, so I'm going to keep pounding it.
Yep. That's crazy. And, speaking of that Cleveland stack, I actually looked playing the Pooch, and the Cleveland stack didn't win there. It was a car stack in first place, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah, Cleveland literally didn't win any GPPs this week.
Yeah.
It was all car stacks, which is crazy considering Baker threw for like 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, and multiple receivers scored 20 points.
Yeah.
And Corey Davis scored 38 on the other side.
Yep. Thank you, Jay Calloway, for the follow. Appreciate that. Bismarck was a gas can versus 30th run DVOA Chiefs with hella weighted opportunities. Eye emojis.
Yeah, I will say Chris is a massive Myles Gaskin fan, and I haven't seen what Chris is writing up at the plug this week, but I think we can be pretty safe in saying Chris is probably going to write up Gaskin in the plug this week.
Yeah, definitely. Spiral says, who are some players you're loving on DraftKings so far this week with high floors? Brian, I don't know about you, but I haven't really looked at anything this week.
Yeah, is Motto up and running yet? I know it's Wednesday.
Yeah, it's up. It just came up about a couple hours before, around like 9 o'clock it came up.
Okay, let me. I'll take a look. If you guys have any other questions, I'll take a look and answer that for you, Spirals, while we finish out the show with questions.
Yep, cool. So we're here for 2 more minutes. If you have any last lingering questions, go ahead and get them out before we get up out of here. Ed says Logan Thomas and Gas Can is Chris's dream slate.
It really is. Yeah, you should have seen the staff chat. It was just Chris going nuts over Logan Thomas when he was going off on Monday.
Yeah.
I will. So the best high floor plays I'll say this week. Eckler again, still too cheap. I know they got blown out. We gotta assume they don't lose by 45 points again. Eckler tops our model for week number 14. McCaffrey, if he comes back, it sounds like he will. Let's monitor his thigh injury. James Robinson, of course. Shout out to Bismo for liking that. Those are the biggest high floor plays for me. I think, yeah, that's roughly it.
Yep. Cool. Jordan Reed's revenge game, Ed says.
Oh yeah, it is. It is Reed's revenge game against the football team. So
nice. Spiral says, when's the Occupy Fantasy meetup? I'll fly out.
yeah, whenever COVID's over, we're gonna get something set up for sure. We're gonna do like a DMV meetup, I think. So, hopefully soonish we can get something going.
Yep, definitely. I watched a video. I'll say for 30 seconds. We're waiting for these last couple of questions. I saw a video on YouTube. It was like how we ran a convention. It was just some I was like cooking. I don't know what it was, but it was like all the behind the scenes stuff. Actually running a convention, like 1,000.
It fucking sucks. Yeah,
that's gotta be the worst. That I would have so much anxiety every day.
It did. My old job, my job before Occupy, I had to like coordinate our conference attendance, and that alone was terrifying to even do just because of the logistics. Can't imagine actually being on the other side of that and coordinating everyone else's attendance. So yeah, not a field you want to be in.
Yeah, my old job, I had to work one thing, and people would just be like, yeah, I paid, but but can I get like a partial refund, or like I paid and but I double pay? I was like, okay, all right, let's figure this out.
Disaster.
Cool. So let's get these rapid fire questions out. Spiral says, I get my wisdom teeth out tomorrow. Wish me luck. You got this.
Best of luck, sir. Are you going under, or are you just getting the Novocaine straight to the mouth?
I will say, when I got my wisdom teeth taken out, that's how I found out I was allergic to pain medicine. That was fun. So I got all 4 wisdom teeth taken out. Sick as a dog, throwing up, can't eat anything. It was the most miserable week of my life.
Typical moves.
Yep.
Getting sick.
Tina says, I hope I hit it big with these guys and share my story with you all. Yeah, definitely.
We would love to, man. I mean, one of the best things we can do is one of you guys hit it big. We bring you on the podcast and get your story. Everyone loves hearing those stories. So absolutely. It's up to you guys. Go do it. Go hit it big so we can get you on.
Star Wars Dad says, Kiki had a great week. Are we playing him again, even though he's in a tough matchup?
Probably so. He's not that expensive. He's still mid 5Ks on both sites. So his price increased, but not a ton. I assume he'll be in play again. Again, I haven't looked at the slate too much, but his price increase isn't like prohibitive.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see. All right, Spiral says he's going under, so that's not bad.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. Let's see. Ed says you can bring me on about how to lose it big. Not yet, Ed. Jay Calloway says, do you use the same value metric for every slate, or does it vary?
Jay Calloway, let's see. Do you use the same value?
I think it means like formula.
Oh, I see. No, actually, I don't use that at all, Jay Calloway. It's kind of crazy. Let's stick around for a couple more minutes to talk about this because, I mean, just repeatedly, we've gotten this question over the past month, it seems like, about people asking for points per dollar projections. And I understand that. For low-risk contests, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads, it makes a ton of sense. But I got to be honest, even when Chris does his projections and he writes the daily plug with a low-risk mindset, he's not even thinking about that. He's just thinking about how can we get the best plays into our lineups.
Yeah.
For NFL specifically. And for me, high risk, I literally don't look at it at all. We have a more advanced metric, the OF index, that the best way to put it, Moose, is it's kind of like a salary multiplier, but it's more upside and it takes your salary into account more, because if a 3K player scores 3 times their salary versus an 8K player, obviously the 8K player is worth more despite them both having 3 times their salary multiplier, because he scores 24 compared to 9 points. So I do use the same metric, but it's called the OF index. It's our proprietary metric, and it's not your typical value metric. So I hope that answers your question, Jake Holloway.
Yep. Cool. As there's my 333 win podcast invite.
Bro, you gotta win the 333, and then you get on the podcast. The ticket doesn't suffice. We gave you some shout outs, and we gave you enough love for winning the ticket. But hey, man, you're progressing. You gotta take that next step. You gotta win the 333 with that ticket once you get it now.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. So I think that'll wrap it up. Brian, do you have any last lingering words for us before I take us out?
I don't. I appreciate everyone joining. Again, we love these episodes because we get to talk a lot of high level strategy, and just keep an eye out in the coming weeks. Obviously, NBA preseason starts Friday. We'll continue doing our Saturday streams for NFL.